Mhm.
Hello and welcome to the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show. We are live on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I am your co-host Judy Forder, and I am here with my co-host in peace, Kris Burke.
Hey, everybody.
If you have been enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe to support us in our journey to help others. Today's topic, forgiveness. What's the payoff?
Bum, bum, bum. This is going to be a good one.
It's going to be a good one. We're going to talk about what's the payoff if you don't forgive and what's the payoff if you do forgive.
Mhm.
So where shall we start, Miss Burke?
I think it makes sense to start with our lovely map.
Ooh,
Yeah. Cue the
always
map, right?
good.
Yeah. Thank you. Um, let's just go around the map and talk about what's going on in that forgiveness dynamic in each of these quadrants.
Okay, now, full disclosure, we did not connect forgiveness to the map until yesterday
Some of us didn't.
when preparing for the show.
That's right.
All right, smarty pants. I did not connect it to the map until yesterday when preparing for the show because I'm going through something right now
Mhm.
that I felt I had worked on the forgiveness part of it, and then all of a sudden there's more coming up. So in discussing this with Kris, I was able to realize, which you would think, if healing is like a spiral staircase, forgiveness is part of that journey as well.
Yeah.
It never hit me that you can heal at one level and forgive at one level. And then once more crap comes up, you may have to forgive again
Right.
for a whole different thing, but same person,
Mhm.
same people. Not only the person involved, but yourself all over again. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, Kris, proceed, please.
Okay. I mean, it's one of the really nice things. It's the big payoff. It's like uh, the big, what do you call it? Jackpot when you actually get to the fourth zone and you're experiencing forgiveness at that level because it unravels all of what was happening at the other levels. I mean, all of a sudden it all looks completely different, feels completely different, and therefore you behave completely differently. But let's talk about it. Most of us start out with forgiveness, in childhood, in that peaceful little childhood home there with the rainbow over it, where, things get said and things happen that don't always feel peaceful, right? That aren't always peaceful, that aren't always loving. We've talked before about people being unconscious, kind of acting out their patterns, and how that can be really hurtful. And sometimes it seems intentional, like perhaps your parents get divorced, or what are some of the other childhood things that happen? You move away from where your best friend lives, or things like that, right? So it can seem to a child that this actually happened to them, that this was an intentional, life did this to me. And so a lot of times that they hurt me, or life, whatever people think about, God, the world, whatever it is, doesn't like me because they've done this horrible thing to me. And so that level of inability of blame in that level is really about blame. It's about other feeling powerless, because in childhood, let's face it, we're kind of powerless. Whatever the adults in our world say kind of goes ultimately. And so, in that powerless state, we don't know what else to do other than to blame people for our situation. And the challenge with that is that if we don't bring up those feelings later in life and re examine them, as we've been talking about, that blame can actually continue to bring about the same kinds of feelings and thoughts and experiences that we really want to escape.
Yeah, it's look at what you did to me,
Hmm.
or look at what you made me do.
Yes.
very much playing, taking that role of the victim.
Right. And it makes sense that we think of ourselves as victims when we're in that level of consciousness or our experience, because as children we are, it's if we knew better, we would have more options, but we only know what we're taught or what we observe and experience in the environments that we grow up in. So if people are kind of acting out their pain, and their own wounding and fear, and that's and we're getting exposed to that, then we're not in an environment where we could learn about how we might otherwise handle it. One of the ways that we might otherwise handle it, as our consciousness starts to rise a little bit and we get to the level of intellect, is actually when we start to we want to talk about what happened to us, and we want to get validated, for our anger, for how we feel. And see, up in that zone two, anger is one of those things, and pride and scorn. So that's a place where we really want to talk about all these terrible things that were done to us, and we want people to agree with us that we've been wronged and we deserve to have that righted.
Vengeance,
Vengeance.
validation, and vengeance.
Hmm. Yeah. So you kind of imagine the judicial system is kind of, all of the social systems where we perceive there to be wrongdoers or villains and victims. All of that's happening on the left-hand side. And we have systems that are built just to punish people for doing the wrong things. And we might think, well, yes, of course you need that. And sort of, the way Judy and I live and over at Masterful U and in Peaceful Empowerment Works, we kind of say, well, if we're all living on the right from, not in, if we're all living from the right hand side of the map, zone 3 and zone 4, and letting our intuition and our inspiration guide us, people aren't acting out doing atrocious things. It just doesn't happen when we know how to honor our emotions and how to express them in a healthy way.
Yes, and recognizing that if you get emotionally triggered when you're in the zone 3 or zone 4, the right side of the map, that it has to do with past experiences. And when you pause and you can ask where that's coming from, then you can trace it all back.
Yeah.
And you don't end up pointing fingers at, look at what you made me do, or look at what you're doing to me. Yeah, it takes that path right back to questioning. Pause and ask.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in the right-hand side of the map, we know. So when we're in zone 3, we don't know the answer, but we know enough to ask questions. We know enough that to know that what we've done our whole lives, the patterns that we've just followed, because that's what everybody is doing, collectively got us into the experiences that we're having. And if we're, watching this or taking a class, then it's because we've decided that that experience isn't working for us. It's like, okay, it got us to where we are, but I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to think these particular thoughts. I don't want to feel this way, and I don't want to say and do the things I've been saying and doing. It's just not working for me. I want to explore what could be better. And so now we kind of know what we don't want to do, and this is a really tricky thing that happens in zone 3. We know what we don't want to do, the thing we've always done, but we don't know what to do instead. And so that's where, when we're in zone 3, we really have to ask questions. Okay, what role am I playing in this? What can I do differently? What action can I take that will deliver? We like to say a win-win experience.
Yeah. And I will say the experience I alluded to, I started in that zone 1. My instincts were, there was so much grief that I had to blame somebody for it. And what had been done is unforgivable. Unforgivable. I don't know how many times I said those words. Absolutely unforgivable.
Yes.
And then I moved to that zone 2 where it was like, okay, here comes the anger and hate, and somebody needs to pay for this. There's the
Right.
vengeance. And
Right.
then I created my villain. So I had the villain that I could blame everything on.
Mhm.
And, that wasn't working. So, once I had the guidance from teachers. And like I said, I was having energy sessions and all that kind of stuff, and digging to find out. Once I got to that zone 3 intuition, I got to see the person and the people involved as humans,
Yeah.
not the villains, not the people that intentionally hurt me, not, scum of the earth, but I got to see them as humans and maybe, look at things from their side of it. And how would I feel if this was me? And what would I have done? And, you go through all the what would I have done? And then you realize, well, you're not the same people. You haven't had the same experience. So even that isn't a place. It's judgment. That's not a place to sit in judgment. So in zone 3, I was able to see them as people and be happy for where they were and the joy they were experiencing. And that zone 3 was where I realized me holding that anger and that hate and just scorn, holding all that was killing me.
Yes.
It was literally killing me because I was doing things that were not healthy for my body.
Mhm.
So it was killing me. It's, some I'm sure some philosopher, and I don't know their name, said, you know, um, holding hate and anger against someone is like drinking poison and expecting them to die.
Yeah.
And it was in that zone that I woke up to the fact that, hey, I'm in this prison. If I give forgiveness, then that allows me to step out of that prison.
That's right. That's right. I like to think of it as we have this pain and we don't want to experience it. And so we close up, we like lift the drawbridge to our castle, to our, to our heart, our inner chamber. And we just lift up the drawbridge and we say, nobody's coming in here anymore because I don't trust you. I don't feel safe with you because you're the enemy. But we lock ourselves inside with that pain and hurt, right? So it's not like we're protecting ourselves. We're actually trapping ourselves with those really uncomfortable, hurtful feelings. And the drawbridge is how we might connect with other people and get that love that we need to heal.
Mhm. Yeah. And in zone 2 is where we talked last week's show about the auditorium.
Mhm.
That's when that tool came to me. And it was explained that people, you get to pick and choose who your front row people are. And just because you forgive a person doesn't mean that they move to your front row.
Right.
You can forgive them and keep them in the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's your choice where they are to fit in your life and if they are to be a part of your life.
Right.
Forgiveness isn't an all access pass.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's not forgiveness doesn't mean all of a sudden we're best buddies or that we have to act a certain way or that we have to take any action. It means that in your heart, you know that you've seen the truth of this human condition and you appreciate the grace that is shown and offered to you. And you're willing to offer that to others because you understand that in order to hold that grace and feel that grace, you have to share it. Because if we're blocking off, if we're holding on to resentment towards somebody, uh, then we have blocks inside of us to our own grace. Right? Is that yeah. Or that peace, that flow of peace that we like to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just like we say unconditional love. If you don't have it for yourself, it's impossible to have it for others.
right.
You can think you do, but the judgments are there. And yeah, the hardest pill for me to swallow, though, in this entire journey was that I created all of that. I played a role in all of that. I'm stubborn. I was sent here to learn lessons. And because I was so stubborn, the universe kept sending up experiences where I had to feel that pain and that anger and that frustration until I finally one day woke up and was like, hey, there's something different and I have the power to choose different.
Yes.
So yeah, the hardest pill for me to swallow was, hey, you create your own experiences. Well, that's great for the good stuff, but you also created the rough stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really hard one. And I actually think, from our experience, that seems to be why people are reluctant to explore this inner work, because they don't really want to find out that underneath it all, they were responsible. I mean, I don't like thinking, oh, I spent, 50 years of my life carrying around pain and resentment that I was making up.
Right.
And I want to be clear. It's the things that happened in my life. What I'm not saying that I made up the occurrences. What I'm saying is that I made up the story that it was somehow an unforgivable thing that had happened, and that I would somehow benefit from holding on to this idea that I was powerless and had been wronged.
Mhm. And that kicked open the door to, okay, I've done this work to forgive these others. Me realizing that, hey, I'm the one that brought these experiences on, I then had to forgive myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we talk about bringing the experiences on too, so much is happening at the unconscious level. Freud talked about our consciousness as being an iceberg where the tiniest little tip of it was above the water, and that's our waking consciousness. That's our awareness, right? And so most of what's happening that our minds are creating and, kind of feeding into us as thoughts and feelings, most of that is happening beneath our awareness. So we're not talking about saying, "Oh, I want to have something terrible happen to me." It's having the energy of, "Oh, something terrible things happened to me." I remember being in the 3rd grade and there was a raffle, a Valentine's Day raffle, and I won a box of chocolates. And I remember coming home and announcing to my family, like, "I can't believe I won. I never win anything." Right? Which is just bizarre because in 3rd grade, I hadn't even lived yet. So how did I know that I never won anything? But that kind of energy, I never win anything. Imagine that playing out in your life and how often you might be really close to having some sort of win and it gets sort of swept away because you have a belief that says that can't happen to me. Ah,
So Jennifer Clark says, if we can't forgive others, can we truly forgive ourselves?
good question, Jen. No.
I'm going to have to say no on that one.
No. And this is once again forgiveness. Let's look over in zone 3 under intuition. Great question, Jen. Thank you. Over on zone 3, the fourth step up is acceptance or forgiveness. And so it's a feeling. Forgiveness is an experience. And it's not really attached to um a person or a situation. It's either an experience that we're allowing ourselves to have, that we have embodied, that we have said, yes, forgiveness is part of me, acceptance is part of my nature now, is part of my beingness now. Either we've accepted that and we are consciously protecting our space, our internal space, so that that can flow there, right? We're watching ourselves when we're judging, when we're wanting to make somebody wrong. In the beginning, it takes diligence, right? To say, oh, I'm trying to make that person wrong right now. Why is that? Right? Why am I uncomfortable with, why am I feeling, excuse me, why am I feeling uncomfortable? And why am I telling myself that by somehow attacking them in my own head or even out loud, that that's going to make me feel better? Why am I perpetuating that, what we all know by now, myth, right?
Mhm.
It's a myth. So why am I perpetuating that? And just by doing that, we can say, okay, I see that. I'm willing to let it go. And boom, acceptance and forgiveness is ours again.
And that's where courage comes in.
Yeah.
Courage comes in because when you have the courage to check yourself, you know,
Mm.
I can remember, and I still do it to this day. I'll be like, oh, there's my judge.
Yes.
What's my judge doing out? And if I'm judging somebody else, it means I'm judging myself. What's going on?
Right.
And it takes courage to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, it does.
So Shannon Landfield said, thinking people are doing the best they can as souls in human bodies really is helping me. Thanks, Judy. You're welcome. Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, when you can come to the realization that everybody's really just doing the best they can with what they have, and hold the hope and the energy that when we all know better, we do better, it really opens your eyes to, you know, this human experience is like a doctorate PhD program in living life.
Yes.
And everybody's learning, whether they know it or not, learning, growing, and making choices. So the work we do is about becoming aware of what were we calling them yesterday? The blind spots.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And we're either evolving, we're either on this journey of letting go of the childhood things that we didn't, the unconscious things that we stored because we didn't know what else to do with it. And getting into that place where we're starting to have some desire and say, well, maybe I can have something that, this is steps that we go through. Okay, I'm not powerless. Maybe I can have things. But in order to do that, I've got to let go of, my anger and eventually get to the place where the midlife crisis is about people getting to the top of zone 2, getting, pride's taking them as far as they can get, and they're looking around and feeling how they are in their skin and saying, this actually didn't deliver what I thought it would or what I hoped it would.
Yeah.
Right. And that's yeah.
Absolutely.
What now?
What now?
And that's where that whole mind, body, soul movement has come about. And people start looking for that inner connection. Okay, I'm looking for something I can't find out there. How do I change the way I feel in here? And that brings us to zone 3. And as we practice in zone 3 and ask questions, we start to strengthen the connection between ourselves and our higher self. The self that is here, and that level of consciousness that transcends what any single person or even group of people could possibly know. We get to that higher intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that is a great place for us to take a little break. And when we get back, we'll talk about zone 4, inspiration forgiveness. This is the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm John Thomas. I want to share with you a professional products and services directory we call Going Solo Directory. And you need to check this out. If you want exposure to your business or are seeking professional product or services, this directory has it all. And that membership, for the many special features, you get the benefit of a worldwide exposure with a 40-minute video interview on an international business show showcase. All this for just one low annual fee. For more information, contact GoingSoloDirectory.com.
And we are back. This is the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show, and our topic today is forgiveness. What's the payoff? I think maybe we'll throw it to the comment that we received on Facebook this week. For those of you that watch on Facebook, Kris and I put up just the show topic and a little question, and we got a nice comment from Mendy Skoll this week. She says, such a great topic because we don't really talk much about it or depict it in media form. I feel it's above moving on, letting go. Forgiving myself is something I'm working on. My mom always taught me that if God can forgive me for my ignorance, transgressions, hate, that I can do the same for others. Doesn't mean that we stay vulnerable. We are just more aware of what happened or who the person is. And for me, going back to the book, The Four Agreements, always gives me a reminder. Mendy, thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
Yes. God is an all-forgiving God. And many times I forget that.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, there are funny things about even saying, talking about God or referencing God. We talked a little bit yesterday, and since we're going to the fourth quadrant of inspiration on the map, many times, we say, oh, do you talk about it? And we talk about God, the universe, your higher self, goodness. I mean, whatever it is, whatever that word is for that feeling of knowing when you're in zone 4, that you just know all is okay and that you're being supported, that there's something happening that maybe you can't understand. But when you ask questions and you get quiet, you begin to know, to absolutely know through the building of experience that you're being guided, that this is not, you're not alone in a Wild West show floating off as a piece of dust, but you're somehow in something intelligent and you're going somewhere. You're involved in a process of becoming, of evolving. Right. And I said, for me, this journey, like, I feel uncomfortable about saying that because I know we all have a lot of stuff around, what that is or what to call that. But I can tell you, for me, this journey took me 15 years and I'm still got lots of journey left in me. And had it not been for having experiences where I had the opportunity to speak to, certain people, or, animals sometimes showed up and gave me symbols or signals rather. If not for these, I would call them divine moments of connection and intervention, I would have given up.
Mhm.
And to me, like, I think it's important to understand that we need to find that, open ourselves up to not wanting to be convinced, because that would never work. Not wanting to believe in something, because again, that works in zone 1 and 2, but in zone 3 and 4, believing doesn't work because you need something higher. This is higher consciousness. You need to know. And in order to know, you've got to have personal experiences repeatedly over and over and over again where you say, okay, I can't explain why. I don't know who, I don't know how, but I know there is something that's communicating with me. And that's where that trust and faith comes from.
Yeah. And, a lot of people will call it mother's intuition, a gut feeling, things like that. That's something within you. That is something that you hear and you don't know why. It's a knowing. I don't
Mhm.
know why I know. I just know.
Right. Right. And that fourth zone 4 inspiration, what forgiveness looks like, when we're in that space, is basically just accepting that we don't know, all of the pieces. And how many times as we travel along on our journeys do we think something horrible is happening and it feels very uncomfortable at the time. And later on, we look back and say, wow, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Mhm.
Right. So when you're in zone 4, you're really looking back on your whole journey and you're saying, I can see the blessing in all of it, even the really hard things. And if
Yeah.
I can see the blessing in it, then maybe I can take the sharp teeth off my dragons. Right. The people, the perpetrators, the enemies that I faced, what happens if we decide, like, wow, they played a role, a really important role in me having the awareness and the level of consciousness and acceptance and peace that I have today. And they played a critical role because without them, I'm not me today. So it can be a great exercise when we're in that fourth zone to actually practice, like, taking the sharp teeth off your dragons and putting on unicorn horns.
Yes. And really seeing, admitting, honoring what a large role, because those times of struggle, that those are our biggest lessons.
Yes.
I feel, in my experience, they've been my biggest lessons. And to get into zone 4 and that space of inspiration in regards to forgiveness is me having to admit I don't know all the information. I don't know why they did what they did. I don't know where they were. I don't know. I don't know their past experiences that influenced the decisions that they made. And it's a step up from when we know better, we do better, because it's me admitting, okay, finally, I'm admitting that I don't have all the information.
Right.
And the funny thing is, after we talked yesterday, I can remember being told by my grandmother numerous times, you don't have all the information, Judy.
Right.
You don't have all the information.
Right. Yeah, that's so important. We like to always remind ourselves and one another that people are either talking and expressing their pain, which I know we've said before here. They're expressing their pain, or they're expressing truth, right? Truth and love and joy, those higher vibrational things. So when people are hurting us, what they're really doing is they're telling us that they're expressing the fact that they have pain and they don't know how to resolve it any more than we did until we learned how. Right? So when people are expressing unconscious pain because they don't know what else to do with it, and sometimes some of that expression gets on us, and it makes our lives hard. It's hard when you do what we do, eventually get to a place where it's like, I can see they're just expressing their pain. And to get angry with them for that can only happen if I'm still not acknowledging my own pain.
Yeah. When it hits you emotionally, it means there's something in there that you need to dig a little deeper and find out. Something's calling out for healing.
Yeah.
Something's calling out to be, yeah, pulled forward, made aware of, and healed.
Yes. Absolutely. So I see we're always the time goes so fast because we have so much fun doing this. But let's go through the 4 zones kind of quickly and just talk about what's the payoff of holding on to. And if I can ask you, and you just tell us from your experience, maybe. Um,
Shannon says, so then we go to the story. The story will tell ourselves about us. Exactly.
exactly right.
Exactly. Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that'll be great.
yeah, great. So Judy, in zone 1, what's the payoff of holding on to the resentment or the yeah.
In my experience, the only benefit was to the liquor store.
Oh, there's so many layers of truth to that. Yeah.
That it did nothing. It kept me in a pit of anger and despair, and it
Yeah.
honestly, it didn't allow me to I will say properly, in air quotes, grieve the death of my mother.
Yes. Yes. And did you get consolation? I mean, did people at least give lip service to feeling sorry for, so that was there some attention
Oh
that
yeah.
may have seemed positive from
Oh
that
yeah.
Expected.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Zone one was where I actually got validation in zone one as well, because yes, I did.
Yeah. That's important because
Yeah.
when we give up that victim, people are no longer going to say poor you,
Yes.
right? And
Hmm.
that can feel like, oh gosh, well, if I don't get poor you, what attention will I get?
Hmm.
I know that played a role in my life. So then we learn when we learn if we let that go, if we resolve that and we get into zone two, what's the payoff of holding on to um, your resentment in zone two?
In my experience, I was able to create the villain, so I had somebody to blame, which was able to shift the blame from the initial person that I felt hit. Yeah, their behaviors were unforgivable. So it opened that door to allow me to forgive one person, but I made another person the villain.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
yeah, me, I'm such a big person. I'm taking the high road. I'm forgiving.
Yes, and gosh, you so nailed zone two because in zone two, it's always about manipulation and exchanging. It's like, well, if I think about it this way, I'm going to feel bad. So I'll just change the way I think about it and talk about it. Then I can feel better. We haven't done anything differently. We're just telling ourselves it's different,
Hmm. Yeah,
right?
and Shannon says to justify why I was so bitter and angry.
Yes,
Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. And we kind of skipped over. So the payoff of letting go of the zone one level of resentment is actually that you get to zone two. And
Yes,
this is a more powerful experience.
absolutely.
Yeah. So what happens in zone one? What other zone two, sorry, what other payoffs are there? So you've been able to shift the blame. So what else is happening there? I'm just thinking about in terms of like friends and family. Like how is the dynamic different there, do you think?
Um, Again, there was a lot of validation in zone two as well.
Mhm.
You know, the villain that was chosen, there was full support in yeah, and that person being a villain. So
Yeah.
that was a lot of, okay, I'm justified for feeling this way. It's validated, and you feed. It's like, almost like you feed on that.
Yes. And can you be mean? Do you have permission to act out your anger?
Yes, but oddly enough, as we grew up, it was respectful. You never did it to their face.
Right. Right. Yeah. So that again, that's one of those manipulations, right? Where it's like, oh, we're mean as can be, but because we're above being mean, we're only going to do it behind your back.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm the bigger person.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about you behind your back.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And smile at your face, which is why so many of us have such a hard time trusting people and trusting one another because zone two operates like that. And it's, let's face it, it's dicey in there.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So the payoff for letting go of the zone two drama is what, Judy?
The drama. You let go of the drama.
Yeah.
And again, I would say at zone 2.5 is where I had the realization that, yay, I can create my own reality. And then, oh shit, I created my own reality.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
if you get out of that loop long enough to see, whoo, oh man.
yes. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, you get to have the zone three experience with that of having resentment.
Hmm.
Um, you get to open the door to that, but just like Judy said, we go from powerless and somebody else is responsible to, oh, now I'm responsible. And what I realize when I get in zone three is I don't know how to be responsible for my experience because this is brand new to me.
Yep. Yes.
So yeah. So let's talk about what's the payoff in zone three for continuing to hold on to resentment.
I think by the time you hit zone 3, it's more difficult to hold on to it. As you're working your way through it, you start to, again, you see the person as a human,
Hmm.
and you start to consider maybe what they were going through and try to see things. And not that we can see 100% from their point of view, but you start to consider that, okay, they were going through their own stuff. They were doing the best they could. And, I was doing the best I could. They were doing the best they could. And I have a choice.
Yeah.
Am I going to hold on to this frustration and anger and all this stuff that I feel? Or am I going to make the choice to set myself free?
Yeah. And I remember yesterday you talked about compassion. Like that was where you connected with compassion.
Yes.
So the
Yep.
payoff of actually still holding that when you're in that questioning mode might be that it helps us to connect with our compassion.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Excellent. And the payoff for letting go in the zone 3 space.
The payoff was I allowed myself freedom.
Mm.
I removed myself from that prison by not only forgiving them, but forgiving myself.
Yeah.
Because of, again, that realization that I created that and I held on to that for so long that it hurt me. It didn't hurt them, it hurt me.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a little bit, right? Because we have this idea that when we're thinking angry thoughts about people, you know, that somehow they're experiencing that. But who's experiencing the feelings that go along with those angry thoughts?
Oh, it's us.
Yeah.
It's us. Again, it's like poison.
Yeah.
It's like poison. And we hold ourselves in that prison because we refuse to, yeah, we just refuse because we think by holding on to that, we hold on to them and hold them back. And we don't.
That's exactly right.
We don't at all.
We do not. Remember that what we think and what we feel and what we say or do are all part of a single experience. And so the thoughts that we're having generate the feelings that we're having, which generate what we say and do. They're all connected. So if we're the one thinking nasty thoughts, we're going to be the ones feeling nasty feelings and saying and acting out those feelings, which will perpetuate that level of feeling. Whatever zone we're expressing from and thinking and feeling from, that's going to keep coming back until we decide, ooh, I'm going to stop playing that. I'm going to reset the way I'm thinking.
Mhm. Yeah, it definitely opened my world up to experience more joy.
Hmm. And we love joy.
Mhm. Sure do.
Yeah, and it's something about reverence, because I just glanced at the zone 4 inspiration. Um, Reverence is such a beautiful thing when you start to actually look at yourself and the journey you've been on, and you have reverence for the fact that you stayed in it because it's hard. In each of the zones, as Judy shared, there's a payoff for staying where you are. You're getting a payoff. That's why we're there to begin with, right? So there's some sort of payoff you're getting, and it feels risky to let go of that and kind of move into the unknown of I don't know what's going to happen or what's going to be next. And the beautiful thing is that when you start to connect with that zone 4 energy, you can look back and say, wow, I mean, look at my courage and look at how life put just the right person at just the right place at just the right time to say just the right thing. So it's really a beautiful experience, um, to recognize that, you know, this life journey and the learning that we do is, well, it's pretty profound.
Mhm. Yes, it really is. It really is. I'm not going to lie to our viewers and say that I've gotten to the point of zone 4 inspiration forgiveness in this experience yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
And when I make the choice to go there, I have no doubt that I will.
Mhm.
But right now, I'm still processing some of the emotions, the deeper emotions that came up. It was like that spiral where, okay, I was able to forgive, and I was able to forgive myself, and that was needed in order for me to go deeper,
Right.
really get to the core of where that pain um, started, the point of origin is what I call it. And I'm working through those emotions, and I am fully confident that I will get to zone 4.
Yeah.
But this is a week or two in the making. So,
Yeah.
oh, Kris, I felt it brewing. I wasn't real sure what it was, and then it was in the workshop this week.
Yeah.
That boom, there it came.
Yeah.
So, and
Absolutely.
we talked about the workshop. We didn't tell Cece about the workshop coming up.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, go to masterfulu.com, masterfulu.com, and you can see about the workshop that's coming up next Tuesday at noon. And we have the July summer series starting on the 19th. So you can find out about all of those things on the website. We don't hide any of it.
And don't forget, if you're just joining us or you're new to the show, we do have a map that you can download
Mhm.
for your own use, especially if you're listening through podcast and you're not able to see the visuals. Go
Right.
to the website, click on the map, and then you can have your own copy.
Thanks, Cece. Yeah,
She's
she's fast. All right.
magical.
Yes, she is magical. And we also we need to start closing. So this has been super fun. And
Remember, if you like what you're hearing, please like, share, and subscribe. Our whole purpose is to reach as many people as possible and help support as many people as possible. We appreciate you all joining us. And our people joining us live, thank you so much for your comments. We love you interacting with us.
yeah, we really do. Thank you.
So until next week.